Mcdonald. Now Pickett, a little chance. Can he conjure some magic? It shouldn't have gone through from there, but it has.
See Franklin drifting past. Had to stop and wait for the handball. Sells the dummy. Goes with a banana and kicks the goal.
Stewart under pressure. Waitman might get another. Well, Bailey Smith, it's low. And if you're a Dogs fan, it's beautiful.
Hello, I'm Damian Barrett. Welcome to Access All Areas. We are here thanks to Crypto.com. A few clubs are carrying significant psychological baggage, Matthew Lloyd, as they head into the 2022 final series.
There are a couple of sides, Damian. What I love about finals, it exposes all your weaknesses and those teams who, just the cream rise to the top. It's individuals. So Gary Rowan, for example, has a big final series ahead of him. But in terms of clubs and coaches, Chris Scott, he's 10 and 15 in terms of his finals record, and Chris Fagan's 1 and 5. So for those two clubs and those two coaches, it's a big final series.
And even Melbourne too, Lordo. Last year's Premier, you've often spoken about your dread of not winning a second flag after 2000, and they've got to go and do it again, don't they? They've got too much talent to not get a second flag out of this period. Yeah,
it's a good point you make. Yeah, we finished on top 3 years in a row and only got one to show for it. Brisbane didn't finish on top in any home and away series and won 3. So, yeah, Melbourne are good enough to win two out of this period, but Geelong look the heavy favourite at the moment.
Well, let's go through the matches in order. Gabba, Thursday night. Speaking of one of those teams with that baggage, Brisbane Lions hosting the Richmond Footy Club, Lordo. A lot to take out of this. We saw both the very best and, in some ways, the worst of the Lions in round 20 when they last played the Tigers at the MCG.
Yeah, I thought their ball movement was electric in the first half. The scoreline was 11 goals 6 to 5 goals 6 at half time. So they had 6 goals up. They looked by far the better side. Richmond started to make
this
mistakes.
All happened in the first 15 minutes, Lordo, of match time at least. They kicked 6 goals clear in the first quarter.
Yeah, shouldn't be losing from here. Joey Danaher looked sharp, nice and early. Even Hipwood got on the end of it. But once they ramped up their pressure after half-time, it was a different ball game where Richmond got right on top. And that's my worries and concerns. We saw it against Melbourne 2 weeks ago. They just couldn't handle the heat in the kitchen, and I think that's what Richmond's going to do to them.
Can they handle this man who's a focus here, Tom Lynch? This was the beginning of his sequence of matches to close the season, Lordo, where he went 4 goals, 8 goals, 5 goals. This was the start of that, and he, to me, turned this game.
Yeah, he kicked 4 goals after half-time. He's kicked 21 goals in his past 4 weeks, and what a matchup it's going to be. Harris Andrews is under a bit of pressure with the lack of intensity that he's playing with at times, and you can't be off at all when you're playing on Tom Lynch in this sort of form.
For the purpose of this conversation, let's give the tick on the fitness requirements of Dusty Martin. He plays. What happens?
He does play. Watching him in the vision, I don't think he can play too many minutes in the midfield. I think he's missed too much game time. So I'd say he's 80% forward and just pinch hits through the midfield whenever they need him.
And just cover for him, as they've done for pretty much 10 years anyway.
Well, I think, because he'll be forward more. Hopefully he can apply that forward pressure, because if you don't, that's where Brisbane, with Daniel Rich off halfback and Coleman, they're pretty dangerous there.
There's heightened awareness around injured players and players who are trying to come back in off injury. Tom Mcdonald from Melbourne, Lotto, got through a VFL game on the weekend. Did what he had to do. 11 touches, 1 goal coming after this particular mark. Has still got plates and screws in a foot, a Liz Frank injury, which would normally have kept him out for the year. He's shortened the runway of comeback. He's given himself a chance. I would play him. As rusty as he will be, I would play him.
Who for? Because so he's not going to replace Ben Brown.
I would take out Melksham. As well as he's been going. Tom Mcdonald, Lordo, was crucial to what happened last year, and he played 9 of the first 10 matches this year. They won their first 10 matches. They then went on a 4-win, 6-loss streak after that. I think he's crucial to him. 96 points average with him.
You're thinking of a fit Tom Mcdonald. This is an underdone Mcdonald who's played 1 VFL game in the last 3 months, and you're bringing him in for a final. For Melksham, who's in good form, I'm not messing with what they did against Brisbane a couple of weeks
96 ago. Points for with him, 83 without him.
But this is a different Tom Mcdonald. 1 game in 12 weeks. What I'd do is I'd play the team they've got. If they lose this week and he can get another game under his belt, potentially comes in, but I doubt he'll get a run in the final.
They're up against a star-studded midfield, aren't they, Lordo? It's been a transition year in some respects for the Swans, but one that is already established. Some genuine guns now, led by a guy who had only had 13 games to his name before the year started, Chad Warner.
Yeah, we want to highlight just how many big game performers and how many we're excited to see in the final. So that's Blakey kicking to Warner. You've got Callum Mills, who I'm going to say send him straight to Clayton Oliver and do the job. I've seen him get hold of Dangerfield. I've seen him get hold of Cripps. He's a star. Warner, you're the one that talks about him more than anybody with how good he is. And Tom Papley. So they've got... I can't wait for this game Friday night. These guys going after... Melbourne,
so the hard lockdown on Mills on Oliver?
The way Mills plays, he wins plenty of footy too, but can also lock you down. So, yeah, this is a goal kickers. Since round 17 where they haven't lost, they've won 7 in a row. This is the even spread. It's hard to plan for with this. They get their 2s and 3s every week, and that's what you want probably from a finals team. So Tom Lynch needs to kick a lot probably for Richmond, whereas for Sydney it's very balanced.
Let's get to the Saturday twilight match. Round 3 was the last time Geelong played Collingwood, and it was probably, Lordo, in hindsight, the first time we realised how good Collingwood was going to be. Now, they lost the game, but they led by 37 points late in the third quarter, and Geelong had to come back hard through Jeremy Cameron. But there was a lot to like about what Collingwood did in that game.
There was, and their pressure in this third quarter, you see here, Selwood was frustrated on the night. Young Ollie Henry chased him down. They were in his face. I reckon he got into Jack Ginnivan at this point too. But you just saw the pressure was off the charts. I think it was the highest ranking pressure quarter of any side for the season with what Collingwood did. And look at the scoreline. It's 90-59 at this point with a minute to go in the third quarter. The lack of experience got them, and then also the class of Geelong in that last quarter. But this will be a pretty close game, I would have thought.
How have you got the matchups when it comes to Cameron and Hawkins with Howe and Moore?
Yeah, well, didn't work. Majdon was out of his depth here, so he's not obviously there. But you'd have to say... I just wonder, if you go Jeremy Howe not on any of them, you'd say Darcy Moore on Tommy Hawkins, and then potentially like a Braden Maynard or
a Murphy
type, and then Howe as the spare on them just to support on Jeremy Cameron.
Again, that was probably his best game for the Cats at that stage. Jeremy Cameron had the injury-interrupted hamstring-related problems of last year, stood up in that game, has had an All-Australian year now, and is going to be the most important player on that ground.
Yeah, he is. I think he had a huge pre-season, and apart from this recent hamstring, he's just been one of the players of the year, and I don't really see a matchup for Collingwood to try and stop him.
Yeah. If there's one thing we've learned about the Pies, Lordo, it is that the numbers just don't matter. No. But let's have a look at some of the damning ones for what it's worth. Centre clearances in their last game against Carlton, they got blown away again. It didn't matter with the result in the end, but they can't afford this against the Cats.
Yeah, I think their backline holds up so well that they repel and they ping off half-back. So it's worked for them in a sense, but they're ranked 17th for centre bounce clearances and 17th for clearances overall. I think if that happens against Geelong, and Geelong are getting multiple inside 50s repeat entries, they're not going to cope with that. So a lot of pressure on Mason Cox and Darcy Cameron to hold up against the Geelong Runs.
Yep. Speaking of pressure, a heap on Rory Lobb for his team and him and his role in that team, the Dockers, against the Bulldogs on Saturday night at Optus Stadium, Lordo. Last time they played, we're looking at a few of these moments. He couldn't have played any better. Kicked the 4 goals, missed a couple.
Yeah,
he's going to have to do it again.
You're spot on. It was his best game of the season. He didn't have a lot of disposals, but he was just kicking them from everywhere, just leading with great presence, and that's what they've got to do, make a decision. Who do we play on him? Cordy? Do we bring Keith back? But, Rory Lobb's certainly a confidence player.
It's been a strange year for the Dogs, hasn't it? Luke Beveridge said the competition had moved beyond them in round 17, and yet here they are. And they're a live chance in this game. They're a live chance because that guy there on screen is now a legit player, Jamari Ugle-Hagan. That guy he kicked it to has been for 4 years, Aaron Norton. And this guy, Sam Darcy, is actually, Lordo, the key to what could happen.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Played 3 games.
Yeah, 3-game player, but he's the wild card. I think send him forward. The thing about the Western Bulldogs, I don't think they're going to go too far. I think they can win one final at best. They're the 11th ranked defence in the comp. They don't defend the ground well at all. It's been something we've spoken about all year. So they have to go all out attack, I would have thought, and try and win in a shootout because defensively they're not strong at all.
For the past 2 Mondays on Access to All Areas, Lordo, we've been talking about the carnage unfolding at Essendon. We'll go back last week. David Barham, the new president, had this to say about the search for a new coach, and then the guy heading up the coaching subcommittee, Josh Marnie, changing the narrative.
We think we're after a more experienced coach. We think a more experienced coach might be able to get more out of this list, and we want to give our list the best chance.
Experience doesn't necessarily mean they have to have coached senior AFL football before. They can be experienced, and as Chris Fagan has showed, experienced in football. They can experienced assistant coach. So, really speaking to the board about the definition of that, we wanted to keep it as open as that, and certainly don't want it to limit to people that have coached AFL football. But the real thing is we wanted an experienced coach. Was a decision made by the board, and that's about how we're going to go about our selection committee.
Changing public ploy there, Lloyd, I'd imagine you'd be quite happy with that. You were quite critical last week of being so restricted to only a senior coach, and we discussed it on this show.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure at the time whether Dave Barham had discussed this with the board and also obviously the panel that would be about to be assembled before he made a comment like that, because I said it restricts them. If Pike and Leon Cameron and these guys don't want to coach, well then suddenly you've only got 2 or 3 to choose from. So I'd be scouring the country. I'd be going to every single club and looking at the long-time assistants, like the Nigel Lappins of this world. Blokes, we've seen McRae, we've seen Kingsley, Uze, all these types. I don't think you should just limit yourself to guys who have coached before.
Yeah, I agree, and I still feel though, and this is a gut feel only, Lordo, that Ross Lyon, if he can just subject himself to a form of this overall review and process they want him to go through, is still going to be the man that they do want. With Robert Walls' connection there on that subcommittee.
Well, they don't defend very well. Ross ticks that box. They want someone strong, he ticks that box, and they want someone experienced. So you'd think he'd be one of the favourites at the moment. Don't want to ask you about some trades. I think once you're knocked out of the finals, that's the excitement part for a lot of fans of 10 clubs at the moment. But Taranto and Hopper, where do you sit on those?
Yeah, look, the Giants, Lord, just need to move money out of off their books. Taranto almost certainly will go. That man on screen there, Jacob Hopper, he's contracted for 2023, but Geelong Footy Club's got itself into a beautiful position there where if he does choose to go to the club and say, I want out, the Cats will be front of queue there for him. Where Taranto ends up, Lloyd, it could well be against that team he's just kicked that goal against, the Tigers. Collingwood, I wouldn't rule out in that space either, but they need to move money out. Essendon's happy to move it in, but it's going to be hard for the Bombers given the unknown about their coach, I think, but they've got a lot of money to burn, and they could burn it as quickly as this year. And the other wildcard too was Alistair Clarkson with North Melbourne. Don't for a minute think he's not going to get active with names we haven't even heard of yet.
The Giants up against it because everyone knows they need to move on players.
A bit like Collingwood in end of 2020 when they moved out those big names to do so.
Josh Dunkley?
Yeah, Port Adelaide's massive front runner for him. And look, I just always say, when you get to this stage of a season, now they're about to play a final, the Dogs, he hasn't yet committed. There's a reason for that. Now, he might choose to stay, but he's out of contract this year. We've discussed Rory Lobb too. Bulldogs are quite keen, but how Sam Darcy's progress affects that possibility, I don't know. And Luke Jackson and Brodie Grundy, some of the big men to expected to be moving on.
Do you expect it to be a busy trade period?
Yeah, guaranteed to. Last year with COVID, people just wanted to sort of stick with what they knew. This year we're out of that and the whole attitude's changed. And Isaac Rankin's someone who's already gone public with where he wants to be next year. The 4-year Gold Coast Suns player has left. The Suns really disappointed with how he's walked out on them, but I say good luck to him. He's given them 4 years. He's now going to want to be a Crow, and how that looks, I think, is really exciting for the Crows, Lordo. Now, I know you've got your views that the 800,000 or thereabouts is too much for him. I get what you're saying there, but I think you've just got to strike now and pay overs to get him, because that's a pretty daunting forward line for the Crows next year.
Yeah, Fogarty's come on really well. Phil Thorpe's only going to get better. Rochelli's fantastic player. McAdam's a goal kicker. Walker still playing great footy. But I just do hope that Rankin can have the pre-season of his life and get up into the midfield to justify that big pay packet.
Yep. Our Crypto.com Brave Player of the Week, Lordo, goes to Sam Taylor of GWS. Extraordinarily made it this year in a way that had him in the All-Australian team. It had him as the GWS Giants' best and fairest winner. It was something that everyone who's played with him knew was going to happen. Anyone who's coached him said he is a star. The septic arthritis he suffered a few years ago set him back, but it was just fantastic to see him come through this year.
Oh, he's a brilliant player, and I think that that'll be the first of many All-Australians, because he just doesn't get beaten. He's just the hardest bloke to get a kick on just about in the competition, considering what defence he played in this year.
Yep. Lordy, your brave finals moments of the past 30 years will continue on AFL.com.au and the AFL Live app. Stay with us for all of that and all the news you need to know heading into the 2022 finals series. AFL.com.au, and we'll be back next week with more Access All Areas.